Hey there. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursday. This is your host, Mae Renfroe. And as always, I'm excited about these videos and who I get to talk to because we have some great stories. It's like when I say real people, real stories, and real faith in Jesus. And today I have my guest, Tricia Jordan, and her and I connected on our Bible study just last Thursday that she was a speaker of an online Bible study. And when I heard her story on there and then she shared with the ladies that evening, I was like, I want her on my show to share that she's been to some really hard things that she'll get into, and she's written the book Through the Fire. And so she's going to kind of unpack that for us and share that and that how I met her in the middle of that. So yeah, welcome to the show today, Tricia. I'll let you go ahead and share it. And how are you today?
Hey, great. Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be able to share my testimony and my story. So really appreciate it a lot. So
Well, I'm
I'm
so glad to have you.
Thank you. So I am originally from Georgia, and I now reside in California. And I am married. I have a soon-to-be 21-year-old daughter, and and I'm a hairdresser. So I do that kind of part time now, where I've done it
Yeah.
for like 30, 33, 34 years. So
Oh,
um,
wow. Nice.
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I go back to Georgia every 6 weeks and do my clients. So it's kind of fun, little fact. Um, so I have been a Christian like pretty much my whole life. And thank God, I don't know how I would have made it through what I've been through without him. And last year, well, a couple of years ago, the Lord just kind of put on my heart to write a book. And I'm not a typical author, so was a big deal for me to do this. So I did. He gave me the name of the book probably 10 years ago, and
Oh,
it's called Through the Fire. And I'll show you if it's okay. I'll hold this up so you can kind of see it. This is what
yeah,
it looks
for sure.
like. So it's a
Yeah.
little history on there for some of the things I've been through. Um, so yeah, so I wrote it, and it came out. And TBN actually published it. Their publishing company, and it came out last September. So it was released then. So I've been just trying to like spread. When we go through major things in our life, it's about God being there with you and learning how to depend on Him, and that's what
Mhm.
my book is about. So yeah.
Oh, wow. It's like, similar with our story that I had, shared with you and how God met me after losing our son and how I also, wrote a book called Holding On to Hope to share that story and to give that hope and
Right.
um, that comfort that he gives us, then we can give to others. We know
Right.
that firsthand, but for sure.
Right.
So
Well,
we,
it makes a big difference. So yeah.
Mhm.
So a little bit about my book. If It's just about my testimony, really. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I'm not going to go everything because it's a lot, but I've been
Okay.
through several, major things in my life that God's brought me through. So I'll just give my testimony a little bit on some of them. Um, if I leave something or you have a question, definitely stop me and ask me. So the first big thing that I went through was when I was 4 years old. My dad, we had a little convenience store, and it was had like the best little meat market in town. It's not like our convenience stores today. It's not like a Quick Trip or a Bucky's or that kind of stuff. It was a little different. And so when I was four, it was a Saturday night. My mom and I were home, and he and my brother, who was 10 at the time, were at the store closing up, and a guy came in to rob him and threw a Molotov cocktail on my dad. And it burned him 65% of his body, third-degree burns. And my brother, of course, got burned in that fire as well. And it was trying. It was very hard. I remember my mom answering the phone and being like, "Oh my God, no!" And I think that's the name of my chapter. "Oh my God, no!" Because she was like, "You're getting this devastating news, and we're trying to get to the hospital." And I remember that vividly, even though I was 4 years old. There's very few things I remember, but those things like that I remember like they happened yesterday, kind of. And So my dad was in the hospital for a long time. The first doctor that was on his case actually almost let him die. And I talk about this in my book because I think it's interesting that there was a doctor who was from the burn center in Augusta, and he was had just moved to Cartersville. Like, I don't know if it had been 6 months, a year. I have no idea. I don't remember that part of it. But anyway, he was in Cartersville, and we were able to have the doctor that was on his case removed and put this doctor on my dad's case, and he saved his life. And I talk about how when we go through things in life, that God's lining up stuff before we even realize it. Like he sent this doctor into town so that he was there for my dad to save his life and my brother's leg. You know, and so it's just learning to see God in the midst of your circumstances and your trials when they're horrific, and you're like sitting there going, like, what is going on right now? And it's just like trying to see God's hand all the way through where He's carrying you with it. So that was one of the first big things I went through. My dad survived that, thank God, and I had him till I was 12. And then when I was 12, he had a heart attack and passed away. And he was in ICU for a little bit, so we had time, to tell him bye. And um, at 12 years old, I thought he was going to make it. I was a little surprised that he didn't, and that was another. That's just hard. Like, a 12-year-old girl losing their dad, like it's devastating.
Oh, for sure. And like a blow to your faith.
Yeah, I would
Right?
definitely.
When you have that young faith that, believe in God, you can, even
And
and then,
I think it
then
actually. I think at that moment it actually helped me to know my dad's in heaven because his faith was so strong. And like, even through what he went through, the fire, like the guy who burned him, he got to a point where I remember we're riding down the road one day and he says, I've forgiven him. Like, I've forgiven him what he did to our family, and that's huge. Like, that's a huge statement to make with somebody who's caused you all. I mean, he lost fingers. He couldn't feel. He had to teach himself to pick up stuff again. Like, his whole life was destroyed because of it. He couldn't work again. And so my dad was such a strong person of faith. I remember every morning I'd get up and he would be the one that would take me to school, and he would have um, everything ready when I'd walk in the kitchen, but he would be in there reading his word every morning. And
Oh, wow.
so when he passed, I was like, I'm going to make sure I live a good Christian life. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to see my dad again. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like, it was
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
it gave me
Yeah.
like a hunger for that relationship to be even stronger. Um, and then when I was 14, it was exactly, so my dad's store burned January 17th, 1976. So this is January, it's a Saturday night. My January the 18th, 1986 is a Saturday night. And I had a friend over. My mom had cooked some steaks on the grill, and I was in the shower getting ready for church the next morning. And all of a sudden, I hear this banging on our front door. Well, nobody comes to our front door. First of all, everybody came into our garage, and it's like 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. Honestly, around the same time my dad's store caught on fire, so it was 10 years to the date. And I hear my mom, because I'm like, Mom, there's somebody banging on the door. So we're thinking somebody's breaking in our house. Like, that's
Mhm.
your first thought. And so
Yeah.
she goes to see what's going on, and it's a neighbor behind our house. Like, we have like 2 acres of land, shouldn't even be there. Like, they were there for her grandfather. He had passed away. And when they came out, she saw that our house was on fire. And so she runs around to the front and gets my mom, and she gets us out of the house. And we pretty much lost everything in that fire. I think I shared, though, with you the other night at the Bible study. I
Yeah.
don't always share this, but it's kind of cool. A couple of things with the fire. My mom went to go open the door. It was not in the house at the moment. It was just on the back of the house. The gas grill is what they call on fire, but it was ablaze. Like, our whole back porch. We had a huge porch my parents used to entertain on, and it was all on fire. And my mom went to the door, and she said she pushed the latch. It was sliding glass doors in the 80s. And she pushed the latch, and she said she heard the Holy Spirit, or she actually said she heard my dad, but she knew it was the Holy Spirit say, if they wouldn't have broke out the windows on the store, then the oxygen wouldn't have came and it wouldn't have burned so quickly. So she just released it and backed away and walked out. And the firefighters told her, said, if you would have opened that door, it would have engulfed you. Like, you would have not survived it. And so, thank God, that
That's
he,
amazing.
Yeah, that he did that. And then the other cool thing was my dad's Bible was in the middle of that fire, like the hottest part, because that's where the hottest part came in, was in our kitchen area. And when we walked back in the next day, it was laying there, and everything, like the leather's burned on it, everything's burned around it, and there was not a word that was burned. The entire Bible was still together. And
Wow.
so I just think that shows the power, of
Yeah,
God. Like I think that shows
yeah,
the power
yeah.
of His Word and how strong it really is, and what's behind it. So before, let's see, I'm trying to think. Before my dad died, and even up until this point, I used to deal with fear. And when I was praying today, I was praying about what I needed to share about. And this is one of the things that came to me. And this is in my book. It's just a small chapter. But I used to deal with fear, like extreme fear. And I
Mhm.
could not, I couldn't be by myself. A lot of this came from what I had been through, but can be by myself. When we would go in the house, literally my mom would have to go in before me, and I would sit in the car, doors locked, and she would have to check every bedroom, every closet, under every bed, make sure every door was locked. Um, when I went to bed at night, the same thing. I would have to like go through and make sure every door was locked. I even put a door, like a chair, up under our door. Like that's how much fear that I lived in, and it was hard, like living in fear like that. And
Yeah.
God gave me the verse. I'm going to read it. It's Psalms 27. It says, "The Lord is the light of my salvation, and whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, of whom shall I be afraid?" And when he gave me that verse, I just started quoting it. I printed it out and put it on my mirror, and I just started quoting it over my life every day. And it finally got to the point where I didn't have to do that anymore. Like he started giving me freedom through it, and so I got free. Like I didn't have to have my mom go in and check the door, check the house anymore, and I didn't have to have like the chair up into the door, or um, I was actually able to stay. I remember the first night I stayed by myself, not all night, but just a few hours. Like she was gone somewhere, and I stayed by myself. And I remember I heard everything around me. Here, and I was a teenager. Like I was 14 years old or whatever. I heard
Yeah.
everything around me, but I was able to do it.
Yeah.
And so he totally delivered me from that. And it was
Oh,
amazing. Yeah, like, so I
that
hope that's a
is
word for somebody today. I hope that's a word, because I've been was praying about it. That was one of the things that I really felt like I was supposed to share, just how he gave me the verse, and I stood on his word, and, just trusted in him and said, listen, like, this is what I'm dealing with, but you're going to have to help me through this. And he did, thank God. So as after my house burned, we finally got back into it after a year or so later. But when I was born, I didn't give this a little bit of information. When I was born, I was a baby of five.
yeah.
I had a brother who was 20 years older than me, a sister 18 years older than me, a sister 10 years older than me, and a brother almost 7 years. He's six, right? Like a couple of months later, he turned seven. And so I was a baby. My parents were in their 40s when I was born.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and my oldest sister was already married, and she had a daughter that turned two a week after I was born, and another daughter who was born 3 weeks before me. So we grew up like sisters, like they were my nieces, but we were just a lot closer than my sister and I were. And
Yeah.
we played together and did everything. I mean, all of our baby pictures are together, all of like everything we did it together when we were growing up, until my sister moved to another city. It was about 30 minutes away when they were maybe middle school. I don't remember. Some of that stuff fails me with my memory there. But anyway, we were still like, we just always had stayed, as close as we could. But as they got older and got in high school, they started dating some guys that we weren't as crazy about. And then they got out of high school, and they were actually already in their, like, living in an apartment. And the one my age had a great job, and her sisters stayed home, and they both had babies. So Tyra was the sister that was my age. Um, she had a 3-month old, and Tracy had a 5.5-month old. And it's Martin Luther King, 1990. It's a Monday. And I'm actually supposed to meet them at my sister's house to do their hair. And I did not hear from them that morning, but it was still kind of early. Like this was not like 2 in the afternoon or nothing. This is still in the morning time. And I get a phone call. This when we had call waiting on our phones, and I was talking to somebody, and I get a phone call, a beep in, and I go over to answer it, and it's my ex brother in law's sister, and she said that they had that she just said, Tricia, she goes, have you talked to your sister? Do you know anything going on? And I'm like, no, I'm the only one home. I have my 2 nephews with me. They're like 2 or 3 years old, and my mom was out working doing real estate. And I was like, no, I haven't. What are you talking about? She's like, well, Tracy and Tyra are dead. And I was like, what? And in your head, you're like, I'm thinking car wreck. Like, I couldn't like grasp like anything in my head. You know what I mean? Because you're just like, what? And so I'm trying to get a hold of my family. And then finally, in it, I don't really remember. I just remember getting to my sister's house and waiting for her. And sorry. I cry every time at this point. Um, I remember my sister getting out of the car. That a friend had brought her home from work, and just her falling into my mom's arms. And so her 2 daughters and one of her grandbabies had been killed. And one of the boyfriends, one of the dads of the baby, the ex-boyfriends, came in and shot them. And it's horrific. It's one of the hardest things we've been through in my life. It's just like you with your son. That's where you learn who God is, because you learn that He's there for you. You learn that that's where peace comes from, and that He guides you even in the worst hurt of anything you could go through. And so I remember, like we were at my sister's. We stayed there several nights, of course, and then ended up back at my home in my hometown. And I remember at the funeral, like getting ready to we were leaving the funeral home, and we were we were in the limo, and the 2 hearses are pulling out, and I was just devastated. And we're riding down the road, headed to the church to do the funeral, and I remember the peace that hit me, where it talks about the Bible, the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I still had hurt, like I was still hurting because I'm human. So my heart was still breaking, but in my gut, I had peace. You know what I'm saying? Like that, just that deep down peace that only God can give you. Only God can give you at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I remember that. Like I remember where I was on the road. I remember sitting there, and I remember that peace hitting me. And it was rough. Like afterwards was rough. Like there were days that just, you're just like going through the motions, or just trying. And I honestly, if it wasn't for God, I don't know how my sister would have survived it. She got to keep her oldest, Tracy's son. She got to raise him, and he's like in his 30s now, because this was 1990, and it's turned out to be a great young man, working and stuff. And so, yeah, but it's just you guys, it's something that devastating. That's when again, I've already been through a lot of devastating stuff, and but it's when you still learn who God is again, like all over again, even though you're walking with Him every day and you have a relationship with Him every day, but you feel like your whole world is crumbling. And that's when you learn who He is. Like you learn His strength and His power, and that He's going to get you through it. And He shows Himself to you daily in that time frame. Because we live in a world where it rains on the just and the unjust. It doesn't matter. There's sin in our earth. There's sin in our world. And so just because we're Christian doesn't exempt us from going through painful things. Matter of fact, I sometimes think it makes it harder, because I feel like the enemy's attacking us so much,
Yeah.
And but it's just God's grace and His mercy that gets us through those things. And so those are a couple of the big things I've been through. I also, do you have any questions on that, May? Did you have any
No,
questions?
not
No.
really. I'm
Okay.
just really feeling for you. And wow, you've walked, but I love your faith, and I totally understand that because after losing our son and
Yeah.
house, so so much pain and everything, but that peace, like I can't even describe that kind of peace that I had and communion that I had with God was just
Yeah.
amazing, and
Right.
so that and then just helps you confirm, that He
I,
is who He said He is, and that He meets you there.
I don't know how people do it without him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I really
Yeah.
don't. I don't know how people
Yeah.
go through like things like that. My husband, he's a singer and songwriter, and he, he's had, I don't remember how many years ago, but he had somebody call him. We didn't know him. We still don't know the family at all, but they needed somebody to sing at their little boy's funeral. I think he was 3 or 4, and he had gotten spinal meningitis, and they didn't live in our town. They lived like 30 minutes from us, and they weren't saved. They had no nothing. They didn't know who to reach. They didn't know anything. And so somebody reached out and said, "Hey, will you come sing? At this little boy's funeral?" And he said, "Trisha," he said, "it's already heartbreaking because it's a kid, like it's a 3 or 4 year old, and those parents are already." He said, "But they had no hope." He said, "You could see they had no hope." He said, "It was it was so devastating to see what they were going through, but yet they didn't have the hope of Christ in them. They didn't have the hope of seeing their son one day, or they didn't have that peace, that does surpass all understanding." And he came back a wreck from it. He said, "I wish I could have done more than I did." Um, we've prayed for them many times since then, and I hope since then but like I said, we don't even know them. So if they did, I wouldn't know. Um, Another thing that I went through later on, this happened about 8 years ago now, I think. My daughter also sings and writes music, and
Oh,
she's
wow.
an actress and a voiceover actress and stuff. She's the reason we're in California. And she had uh, auditioned for something, and she actually, out of like 800 people, they chose her to do a song and a video.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, that's
we,
amazing.
it was kind of cool. So we had already been to California to lay down the tracks, and we were in New York for her to actually film the video. And some friends of ours were in town from Costa Rica that were missionaries, and they had adopted a daughter from Costa Rica. She's 18, and then they had their other daughter. And my daughter and the youngest daughter were friends. And so I told their mom, I was like, let them go to New York with us. Like, they've never been. They have a free room to stay in. They just need their airfare, their food, whatever they're going to do, but they can at least be there and go see the city. It was a quick trip. Like, we flew up on a Friday night or Saturday morning and came back on Monday. And when we were getting ready to leave the night before Paris, when the terrorist attacks in Paris happened, and so I, being from Georgia, I am very much I believe in carrying a gun, and I have been through all kind of training for it, like friends that are military, the sheriff's department, like all kind of stuff. So I'm not just like uneducated on carrying. Um, but anyway, so we I decided to carry my gun. Well, I knew, like, when I come to California, you can't carry, or you go to Chicago, you can't carry, or any of that kind of stuff. But you can fly in with it and you can fly out with it. So that's what I thought the law was like in New York. So I flew in with my gun, left it in the room, whatever, for the time we were there, and then went to come back home. And at the airport, just like I do in Chicago and LA and other places I've flown with it, I just, checked it into my luggage. And when I went to go check it, um, she said, "Oh, hold on, we have to have somebody come check that." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, they do it different in every airport, like every airport I've been through with it. And
Mhm.
so I was like, Not a problem." Well, they get over there, and instead of, because in New York you can't have, not even a empty gun clip, you can't have anything associated with a gun. I got arrested with a B class felony, and that is one step below a murder. That's what a B class felony is. Okay,
Oh,
and
because I love blue. Oh,
yeah, and so they considered my gun loaded because my gun and my clip were in the same suitcase, even though my gun was sealed and locked, and you couldn't get to it, and they couldn't even find my bullets when they went to go look for them. But they were in the same suitcase, so it was considered a loaded gun. So so anyway, they arrested me. Again, God knew ahead of time. I was surprised. He was not surprised. So he had somebody there with my daughter that could fly back with her on a plane. He had somebody, like to take care of her. So, because if not, she was 12. She could have flown back, but it would have been, she could have ended up in their care. It could have just been like all kind of stuff. So I ended up they first took me to like a holding cell, like at the Port Authority, and then they took me to Queens. And when I got in the holding cell, there was a young girl in there, and she was 26, 27. She was a singer songwriter, and she was an alcoholic. And I remember I was a mess. I don't get in a lot of trouble, so for this was like huge for me, and I was just like, I couldn't quit crying. I was like, okay, God, I know you're in control, and I remember telling him at one point, I'm here, so you must have a reason for me to be here, but I am not Paul and Silas. I'm not going to be standing up on a chair. I'm just barely making it right now, but use me if you can.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a reason I'm here. I wouldn't be here. And I remember that little girl, I talked to her most of the day. I did not get her name or her number. I wish I would have, because I would have loved to, I just didn't have my wits about me for that kind of stuff. Everybody that came in, they were all so sweet to me. They were all so mad. They were all like, you can tell you shouldn't be in here. You can, and got through to the end of the day, and all of them were going before the judge. And another cool thing that happened to me is I was really worried about my daughter getting home, and I couldn't call out because I was long distance. And so one of the ladies came up to me, the jailer, and she said, "Hey, like, you're so upset. What can I do?" And I just said, "I just want to make sure my daughter's in Georgia okay. Like, she's 12." And she said, "Give me a number." And so she left and went and called my husband and came back and told me that she was fine and what she was doing and that kind of stuff. So it gave me a little bit more peace. I homeschooled with her, so we weren't away from each other a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the day goes through, and my brother happened to know somebody from New York, my oldest brother. And so he got a hold of him, and then he got a hold of his friend who was a head jailer. And they met me in front of the judge that night with an attorney. And God just was in the midst of it. Like, that's all there is to it. It should have been a 25,000 plus bail, all kind of stuff. And instead of, she let me go without one. And I got to go home. And when I got home, again, I was a mess. And I kept saying, God, you've been faithful. You've been faithful. You've been faithful. Please show up. Please show out. Like, because it was a mandatory 3 to 15 years prison. So I'm like, I don't want to lose my daughter, leave my daughter over something like this. I don't want to be in this situation. So the Lord sent me to an attorney. And the first person I talked to was the guy that owned the company. And he ended up setting me up with Hillary. And Hillary actually wrote my foreword in my book. And it was really cool how the Lord, like, number one, used her, but also used me, used my, like, what I went through to change her life. And she talks about that in her foreword, about how because of meeting me, she was ready to give up with what she was doing. And the Lord turned around and gave her a desire to do something different. So now she actually helps victims of sexual abuse, and that's what she does now. So it's kind of cool to see her ministry and what God's doing with her. But through it, through much prayer, and this should have went on like 2 or 3 years, and we had just prayed and prayed and prayed. And when we went to our first court case, the DA dropped it from a B class all the way down to a misdemeanor, and I was still like, Lord, that's not enough. I don't want a record. I've lived a good life. I don't want a record. And I remember I was a mess going up, and on our way between Washington D.C. and Philadelphia, there was a double rainbow, and it ended right at a church. And I told my husband, I said, that's my promise right there. That is God showing me I am going before you. This is my promise to you right now. And we got there, and the attorney went in that morning to okay, we're here, get everything going. And she came back out. She went, Tricia, they have dropped it to a violation. She said, it is just like a speeding ticket. She's like, this never happens, ever happens. She said, so, you've got to plead guilty to disorderly conduct, which I was having to do anyway. And she said, and it's just gonna go like on your record for like 6 months, and that's it, and you're gonna be done. And so that's what happened. And God just totally, absolutely showed out through that, and He used that again, not just for me and showing me, hey, I'm still in control, even though you don't see it or feel it or
Yeah.
at this moment. And then He turned around somebody else's life and changed their path because she needed a change in her life at that moment. And I had no idea. I remember heading back home, and I called her. I called her on the phone, and it was like I was waiting for her end of the day because I knew she was busy. And I just said, hey, I just want to thank you, like, for everything you did for me. And I remember her saying to me, Tricia, um, you know, you talk about a lot of things that happen, or the reason, this happened. She goes, I'm one of your reasons. She's like, I'm one of your reasons that this happened. And I had no idea. Honestly, till I got ready to read my book, I did not realize. I knew she had changed her path, but I did not realize that it was that pivotal point until I called her to write my foreword. So it's kind of cool to see how how He uses that, how He uses stuff you're going through to affect other people in their life. And that's why I wrote my book. I want people to understand that God is there for you no matter what. That in the best of the best, He is there for you. In the worst of the worst, He is there for you. He loves you. He cares for you. A lot of people I meet today don't have good relationships with their father. And so when they think of Christ, they think of Him as this big, ugly dude, that's like ready to hurt them and ready to do something to them. That is not God. God loves you. Like, God absolutely loves you with a love that you will never experience, not even human or anything else, because it is so powerful. And He wants to do good for you. He wants to be there for you. He wants to take care of you. He wants to show Himself to you every day and like who He is. So.
Yes, for sure. Wow. I like that. I mean, you said
Yeah.
how God was
Um,
present, worked out those things that look bad, but it reminds me of Romans 8:28 says that God works all things out for good that love
yes.
Him and are called according to His purpose.
Yes.
So things don't have to look good for Him to work out for good,
Right.
though, right? And
Right.
for His glory,
Right.
and to be instrumental in somebody else's life like that. That's
Right.
amazing. It makes you feel good. I know you can say, "That's my God," right?
Right.
That's
That's right. Yeah.
that's right
And
there.
and yeah,
Mhm.
it's what I tell people all the time. Like, you you never know who the one person is that you're going to share Christ to, that they're going to be the Billy Graham, or they're going to turn around and do something to touch other people's lives and rescue other people. And I feel like that happens a lot. I mean, like, even like with Hillary, like, God is using her so strong right now for these kids. And it's pretty cool to see uh His hand and how it moved to that point to kind of help her. And so if you get my book, the foreword's in it, you can read a little bit of what she said. And I'll show you my book again.
Okay.
This is my dad's store right here.
Oh,
And it's kind of hard to tell.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then this is my home that was
Oh, okay.
burned. And so this was my vision I had with this, and with the fire going through it. And I had an artist out of New York that a friend of mine knew. She actually drew it for me. And so it's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I think it's kind of a neat portrayal, because through the fire doesn't just mean fires. It also means just what you go through in life. So yeah, and I do have I have a podcast I'm going to be starting in the next few weeks. I'm very excited about. I'm going to plug, if that's okay. It's called Your Voice Through the Fire, and that's what it's for. It's going to be, I have people lined up that are going to be able to share their testimonies, that have been through things, um, that are like, I'm going to have Mae on there. So just so you can hear other people's testimonies, so it's encouraging, so you can hear who God is when you're going through those things, because I feel like we need that. I feel like we need that encouragement, and we need to know you know that we can see His strength even in the midst of it all. So
No, that's powerful because there's power in our testimonies.
yes.
The word of our testimonies, and that's a verse in Revelations. But I'm not sure it mentions
Right.
that about the testimony and the power of that, and it helps others to know they're not alone, and that others have walked through this, and just to give them that hope and that
Right.
courage. So,
Right. Yeah. So my book has a lot more in it. I've been through a whole lot more. So I talk about a little bit of it. It's not a huge book, but I talk a little bit about all of it. I'll show you this. That's kind of cool. This is my nieces when we were little. Um,
it's just pictures in there?
Yeah, I have a few pictures in the back of it. So
Okay, well, good.
I was trying to find. This was my niece and I right
Yeah.
here when we were babies.
Oh,
We were
wow. Right.
so
Yeah.
close.
Oh, the
Yeah.
pictures. Right, same age. Oh.
And then here's another picture of yeah, I have like pictures of like my mom, my dad, my nieces, that kind of stuff. Here we are again, like all of us right here.
Okay. That's right. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were really, like I said, we grew up together, so it's kind of cool,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Like with because your older sisters were a lot older. Your own,
Yeah. Yeah. So we were just and my nephew too. He's 18 months younger than me. So we all grew up, pretty close together there. So they're all in Georgia though. So I don't really get to see them very often. But yeah.
You're in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's amazing. Like I said, it's amazing. Like when you go through things, you just have to turn around and let God He has to get you through them first because you feel like you're not going to survive them.
Yeah.
But once He does, you just turn around and use them for His glory, and to bring people to Him. And we had this discussion last night that's a little different, but talking about after church last night, we were talking about a friend. Like my daughter had a friend with her, and we were talking about one of her friends and how this particular friend's not a Christian. And she was like, well, I'm living my life, but I don't know, I don't know about as far as like sharing, the Lord. And my daughter, she's about to be 21. And she said, well, I used to feel that way. She said, but then all of a sudden, she said, I started thinking, you know what? If I'm not sharing Christ with them, and even though I'm living it, but if I'm not like sharing him a little bit, like I'm not talking about throwing him down their throat and that kind of stuff, but just little things. Oh, I'm praying for you, or I'm going to believe God to do that for you. Any little thing you can do to share, who Christ is, this show who He is. She said, I finally realized that those friends of mine that I'm not sharing Christ to, then I may not see them again. That something can happen, and I'm not pulling them from hell. And she said, I want to pull them. I want to pull them from hell. I want to show them who God is. I want to show Him He's loving and great, and that He's there for them. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. She was able to show that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's good. And the more that I guess we, love God and realize what He's done in our life, the more we realize and everyone there's no one that doesn't need Jesus.
Right. No, there's not. Everybody needs Jesus.
Yeah, they might
Everybody.
realize that or know that, but that is the truth. And so,
Yeah. Our philosophy is we show them who Christ is, and we let Christ has to clean them up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care, like whatever they're involved in, that's their stuff. I just want them to build a relationship with Christ. I want them to have a daily walk where they're reading their word every day and they're praying every day and they're learning who He is every day. And then He cleans up the rest. He handles that. So yeah, that's what we do. So yeah. So my book again is Through the Fire, one more time, and you can get it on Amazon. I think you're going to put the link on your page.
I'll have it in the description.
Yeah. You can buy it anywhere that any books are sold, like online, like books at Barnes and Noble, Target, any of that, you can buy it. But it is through Amazon's like the best place because you get free shipping and all that. So
okay, sounds good. And then do you have like a website and blog or something too? Website, you'll have your podcast.
So yeah, my blog is going to be Your Voice Through the Fire. That's the link for it. And then my website, it's not quite ready yet, but it's going to be Through the Fire, and then like a -book.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah, hopefully any day that'll be ready because I have that up so you can buy your book through it. I've got some testimonies on it. I'm going to have just a few other things, and even though speaking and doing this stuff is real out of my comfort zone, I do feel like that's where God's leading me. So I'll have that on there too, so you can reach out to me.
Yeah, you would do the public speaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. God will equip you.
Yes, He will. I'm just depending on Him. I'm like, it's so many times the things that we're so uncomfortable with is where He leads us, So,
yeah, that's right.
Because it's not, then we know it's not us. We know it's Him,
And give Him all the glory.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just really appreciate having you on and all that you shared. And I know this is really gonna help someone, they'll be able to really relate and be strengthened by your journey and in your faith in God. And yeah, well, what do you walked you through, but he was there with you.
Right.
So,
He has
so we
been.
pray that.
He is
But
good.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on and giving me this opportunity. And I hope that my words minister to somebody. And you just at the end of the day that you learn who Christ is, you learn who God is, and that you learn that He loves you and cares for you and wants to be there for you.
yeah, for sure. No,
Yeah.
that's true. That's right. So okay, well you
Okay.
take care. All the best to you as you continue to be able to share about your book and in your speaking that is coming
Yeah.
up. And yeah, well, just thank you so much again. So you take care and God bless.
Thank you, Mae. You too. Bye bye.